Good Erev Shabbos. We're holding on Eruvin Daf Yomi Hey. We're going to be discussing the sugya. If you have two chatzeros, one inside, one outside, the inner one to get to the outside to the Rosh Hashanah has to go to the outer one. In other words, they have Teresa's Haregel on the outer one. We saw machlokas earlier in the Masechta between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim. Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that even if the inner one makes an erev, right, unless they make an erev together with the outer one, it's going to go ahead and asa. Because why? Because regel hamuteres b'mkomo, the regel that permits you in your place in the panemius, they're able to walk because they made an erev, still would asa shalom b'mkomo. It would asa in the outer one. The only way let Rabbi Akiva they could all the outer one could carry is if they make an erev, a universal erev between the two chatzeros, inner and outer. The Chachamim are of the opinion no. Regel hamuteres b'mkomo, a regel that permits in its place, meaning if the inner chutzner makes a erev by itself, they would not aser on the outer chutzner, and that's the discussion of our Mishnah. It says our Mishnah, shtei chatzeros zu lifnei mizu and ayin halef on aleph, ayin heyam and aleph. Shtei chatzeros zu lifnei mizu, irvu apnimi v'le irvu achitzoin. If the inner one makes an erev and the outer one doesn't, hapnimi muteres, the pnimi is mutter, achitzoin asur. After all, the achitzoin did not make an erev. Achitzoin v'le apnimius, the outer one made an erev and not the inner one. Now, everyone would hold here, this is important, very important, shteyem asuros. Even though the outer one made an erev, since the inner one did not make an erev, this is a case of regel sarta shalom b'mkoma, the regel that asas in its place because they didn't make an erev, the inner one would asa shalom b'mkoma. Despite the fact that the outer one made an erev, the rights of the inner one to walk out, and they didn't make, right? So, and since they didn't make an erev, regel har sarta b'mkoma, the pnimi didn't make an erev, would asa shalom b'mkoma. Ir v'zu la'atzma v'zu la'atzma, if they both make separate eruvim, zu, right? Zumu teres v'fnei atzma, v'zumu teres v'fnei atzma. How each one will be mutter. According to the Chachamim, each one will be mutter. Why? Once the inner one is considered regel muteres b'mkoma, they don't ask the outer one. And the only reason to ask the outer one would be if the outer one did not make an erev. But this is case zoom esarab atzma, zoom arab atzma. So since the outer one made an erev, very geschmack. So you have two separate chatzerim and two separate eruvim. However, in this case, here's the nafkamina. Rabbi Akiva oisar achitzoina. Rabbi Akiva said even though the outer one did make an erev, nonetheless it would be also for them to carry. Why? Shetrisas haregel esarta. The trisas haregel of the inner ones, despite the fact that they're mutter, because they made their own erev, the inner ones, would aser on the outer ones. That's the chiddush of Rabbi Akiva, a tremendous chumrah. The Chachamim say, ein trisas haregel esarta, a very important, ambiguous line. It says the Chachamim, ein trisas haregel esarta, the trisas of the regel does not aser. We'll get back to this. Shakach echem min achitzoina. Let's say they made an erev. One of the outer ones forgot to be started from the erev, v'lo erev. Panemius muteres, the panemius that did make the erev would be mutter. Achitzoina surah, the chitzoina would be asa because they don't have a good erev. Min panemius, if one of the panemius did not go ahead and make the erev, v'lo erev, then shtei masuras, they would both be asa. Because this is a case of regel ho seres b'mkoma, since he didn't make an erev, with asa shlo b'mkoma. Nasnu eruvim b'makam echad. So until now, we were discussing cases where each one of the eruvim were separate, zula atzma, and in one case, so one forgot to make an erev, so therefore it's not a good erev. What about this case? You made a communal erev, inner guys and outer guys, chatzah 1 and chatzah 2, inner and outer. They both made an erev. They put them in makam echad. We're going to see what that means. The shakach echad, and one of them forgets, regardless. They min apnimi, one of them of the pnimi, they min achitzoina, v'le'irva shnei masuros, the both biyasa. The Gemara will discuss this. However, if there were an individual living in the inner chatzar, if there's an individual in the inner and an individual in the outer, then you don't have to make an erev. What happens if there's two people in the inner or two people in the outer? Then we're going to see the Gemara that would aser. Really, it's machlokes. Says now, there is three possibilities. The first one is regel muteres, is we machlokes Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim. If the inner one makes an erev, whether it asks in the outer one, that's the machlokes, that's clear. Now, what about if the inner one does not make an erev? There's two possibilities. If the inner one doesn't make an erev, but the outer one does make an Erev. There's two possibilities. Either since the inner one did make an Erev, it's a regal she'asarta b'mkomo, it would aser shelo b'mkomo. It would aser the outer one, despite the fact that the outer one made the Erev, or no. Regal asarta b'mkomo does not aser, meaning, as long as I made my Erev on the outside, you didn't make your Erev on the inside, you're not affecting me. I'm still good. I'm considered a separate chutzner. So that's the discussion at hand. Whether a regal that asarta shalom b'mkoma, meaning the inner one did not make an erev, whether it asks in the outer one or not. Pashtus in the Mishnah we learned it did. Rabbi is going to come up with the biggest chiddush, the biggest kula, and say even though the inner one did not make an erev, as long as the outer one did, they'd be good. Says the Gemara. Ki asar Rav Dimi who came up from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, when he was from Bavel, he went to Eretz Yisrael, and very often he would bring the sayings of Rabbi Yochanan. In this case, I'm Rabbi Yanai, he said in the name of Rabbi Yanai. Su divrei Rabbi Akiva. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Our Mishnah seems to be according to Rabbi Akiva, the Omar who's of the opinion, afilu regal hamuteres bimkoma, aseres shelo bimkoma. A regal that's mutter in its place because you made an erev in the inner chutzner would aser in the outer chutzner. And this is underlined. Just like a regal hamuteres. Just like a regal that's mutter, doesn't asa. If the inner chutzner made a erev, it doesn't asa in the outer chutzner. Guys, listen to this. Kach regal asura. The regal that's asa, the inner chutzner did not make an erev, and they're asa. Eino oiseres. They're not going to asa the outer chutzner if the outer one did make an erev. In other words, look at the words of the Mishnah. The second line down where it gets wide. The chachamim oimim ein drisas haregel oisarta period. The drisas regal of the inner one will not asa period as long as the outer one made an erev. Not like you were learning until now, that if the inner one doesn't make an erev, their rights, their drisas regal asses the outer one, even when the outer one makes an erev. No, just like the inner one, if they made an erev and its mutter doesn't asa the outer one, who adin if the inner one did not make an erev, it will not asa the outer one if the outer one made an erev. Now our whole Mishnah screamed the opposite. Our whole Mishnah screamed the only way. The machlokes between Rabbi Akiva and the Chacham is when it's mutter. However, when it's asur, it's asur. Even when the outer one made the erev, we're going to ask a Rav Dimi from our Mishnah on that point. Says the Gemara, what did our Mishnah say? Tanan irva chitzaina v'loy penimi. If you made an erev in the outer one, v'loy penimi, and not the inner one, shtei masuros. They're both asur. Okay, so obviously the erev of the outer one does not help. Now, money. Who was this according to? Ilem Rabbi Akiva. If it's Rabbi Akiva, my area regal asura, I feel regal with muteres nami. Why did you have to say that the inner one did not make an erev in order to aser? Like Rabbi Akiva, even if the inner one did make an erev, it would aser because regal muteres bimkomo asar shelo bimkomo. So in this case is speaking where the inner one did not make an erev. Obviously, it can't be going according to Rabbi Akiva. So therefore, what? Lav Rabbanon. It must be the Rabbanon. And what does it say? It says that when the inner one doesn't make an erev, meaning it's a regal oseres from koma, despite the fact that the outer one did make an erev, it's still asa. Not like Rav Dimi, who wanted to say that it's still mutter in the outer one, as long as the outer one makes an erev. Loilam Rabbi Akiva. He says, no, it's Rabbi Akiva. You can't ask any questions. It's lozu afsu. Not only does Rabbi Akiva hold when one makes an erev, but even when no one makes an erev, but even afsu, even when regal muteres, when one does make an erev, the outer one. In other words, not only when the outer one doesn't make an erev, but even when the outer one does make an erev, it still will be asa because of regal muteres bimkomo asa shlem bimkomo. So it's all called Rabbi Akiva. Next challenge to Rav Dimi, and again, Rav Dimi says the following: even though it's asa in the inner one, because they didn't make an erev, as long as the outer one makes an erev, it works. Our Mishnah is mashma that the only way that it works is they both make a room together. But the inner one, if the inner one asses, it's going to be asa the outer one, even if the outer one does make an erev. Tanan, Ir v'zula atzma v'zula atzma. Each one makes a separate eruv, the inner one and the outer one. The Mishnah said zumu teres v'fnei atzma, the zumu teres v'fnei atzma. They're both muta. Why? Taima, the reason it's muta is the irva, is because the inner one made an eruv. Haloi irva. Let's say the inner one didn't make an eruv, and the outer one didn't. Again, that's our case. Both made an eruv, therefore they're both muta. What happens if the inner one didn't make? Then it will be yasa. But 1 second, the outer one made. So what do you see? Regular suris bimkoma, because the inner one didn't make. Asur shalom bimkoma, despite the fact they made an eruv. That's the kashan of Dimi, who said as long as the outer one makes an eruv, you're good. So for the Gemara, you have a question on Rav Dimi. It says El Elav Rabbana. It says money. Who is this according to? I lost the place. Okay. For her high tana the Amar Regel Muteres Enoi Seres, right? Su Muteres V'Yatzim is the time of the Irva. The reason why it's mutter because he made an Erev. Shteim Haloi Irva, but if the Pnimi didn't make an Erev, Shteim Asurais. For high tana the Amar Regel Muteres Enoi Seres. This is a tana who says a regel that's mutter in its place Enoi Seres, because he said what? It's mutter v'zumata. Regel Asurais says Seres, money. Who is this? Hilaim Rabbi Kiva. He afilu regel muteres nami would aser elav rabbanan he. So we see that the rabbanan hold that is, if the erev, the inner guys don't make an erev, it's us on the outer one, even they made an erev. But ode with the sefer Rabbi Akiva, reishal av Rabbi Akiva. When the sefer is Rabbi Akiva, must be the reishal is not Rabbi Akiva, must be the rabbanan. So you see that the rabbanan hold if you don't make an erev, the inner one it's aser in the outer one, even if they made an erev. Kashna of Dimi. And for the Gemara, no kul Rabbi Akiva. The whole mission is Rabbi Akiva. The chsuri mechsur, you're missing words. We can put some words in, makes it according to Rabbi Akiva. Therefore, it won't be a question on the Chachamim, who Rabbi Dimi said the opinion of. If both made separate eruvim, zumu teres v'fnei atzma, v'zumu teres v'fnei atzma. When would that be? She'asadaka, when they made a wall between them. Rabbi Akiva's moeder, when they make a wall, a little door between them, then it's muta. Avaloy asadaka, we don't make that daka. We said. Chitzoyna surah, the at one will be asa. Diver Rabbi Akiva. Why? Rabbi Akiva oiser. I say chitzoyna if they treat a regal iseres. Rabbi Akiva says even despite the fact that they both made a eruvim, the rights of the inner one, even though it's regal muteres b'mkomo, would asa shlo b'mkomo. The chacham moimim ain't treats a regal iseres. Okay, so right now we've held serve and we haven't shlugged our Dimi. Maser Rabbi Rabbi, the Mishnah says the last din. And if they were individually owned, the inner and the outer, ain't strichim la'aretz. They don't have to make an erev. Hashal rabim. However, if the panimi had more than one person, tzrichim la'aretz. You'd have to make an erev for both of them. Why would you have to make alma regal muteres b'mkoma, a regal that's mutter in its place? In other words, one on one, you don't have to make an erev. Two on the inside, one on the outside, you have to make an erev. 1 second. If they make an erev, it should be good because why? It's regular muteres. Elowat regular muteres as it's good. Says the Gemara. Angels regular muteres. Must have be right. Hashal rabin tzrich la'arev alma regular muteres b'mkoma eino iseres. A regal that makes that's muter in its place eino iseres. It would okay. Okay, so we're asking a question from Rabbi. Rabbi is asked from the last case of the Mishnah that regular a yachid, only a yachid don't have to make an erev. But if the inner one would make an erev, then it would work for the outer one as well. If the inner one makes an erev, so you see regular muteres does not asa shlo b'mkoma, not like Rabbi Akiva. If the inner one makes an erev, it would work. Mashma, if the inner one doesn't make an erev, it won't work. L'chayra, that's not like Rabbi Dimi. Says the Gemara. Alma regal mutresim koma, when two make an erev in the inner one, ain't iseres. Regal asura iseres, but a regal that would asa, meaning if the two didn't make an erev, it would be asa. So that's a kasha on Rav Dimi, who said that regal iseres does not asa. Void mas ravino shaka chechem enachitzaina. If one of the outer guys forgot, v'lo erev, then and he doesn't make an erev, then apnimi muteres v'chitzaina asura. However, shaka chechem enapnimis, if one of the inner one forgets. Time of the shokach. The reason why it doesn't work because he forgot. They would both be mutter. Alma regel muteres ein oiseres, like the Rabbanon. Regel asura oiseres. Therefore, it's kashan Rav Dimi. In other words, the Mishnah, you're right. The Mishnah itself cannot possibly mean that a regel that asas bimkoma would not asa shelo bimkoma. What it means is the following. The first part of the Mishnah is the Tanakama. The Tanakama holds what? If you make an Erev in the inner one, it doesn't asa in the outer one. Rabbi Kiva disagrees. And therefore, however, if you didn't make an Erev in the inner one, it would asa in the outer one. Rabbi Kiva agrees with that. However, when the Chachamim opened their mouths in the second line, the Chachamim oimim, Ein Drisa Regular Sarta, that's a third Shita. We have a Tanakama, we have Rabbi Akiva, and we have a Chachamim. Like the Tanakama, Regel Muteres does not asa. Regel Oseres does asa. Like Rabbi Akiva, both Oseres and Muteres asa. According to Rabbi Yanai, neither asas. Muteres certainly, and even if it's asa shelo b'mkoma, as long as the outer one made an erev, you're good. And that's what Rav Dimi brought from Eretz Yisrael. From Amar, so it says the Gemara. Ravin came. Amar Rabbi Yanai. Gimel machlokes b'davar. The three machlokes b'davar, as I just explained. Tanakama sava regel muteres ein oiseres. A regular muteres does not asa. However, regular asura oiseres. If the inner one doesn't make an erev, you're finished. If the kiva seven, no, I feel regular muteres oiseres. The most chumatik shita. Even if the inner one makes an erev, it's not going to help because they have rights to the outer one. Rabbanim basri seven, no. Shem sheregel muteres ein oiseres. Just like a regel that if they made an erev in the inner one, it doesn't asa. Kach regel asura ein oiseres. Even if they didn't make it in the inner one, it doesn't asa as long as the outer one makes an erev. Thus, the Eruvin Makam Achad were in the Mishnah that they went ahead until now. We were discussing they made separate Eruvim. Now they're making a communal Erev. So they go ahead, they make an Erev. You have how many houses? L'chari, you have 8 houses over here. 4 on the inside, 4 on the outside. And in the inside, now they make a communal Erev. Meaning in one place they make an Erev and they put it in the other place. Now what happened? Nasma Eruvin Makam Echad, the Shakach Echad, Bein Minapnimis. Now, my makam echad. It says makam echad. What does that mean? That the simon is kitzoyna atzma, the ba'is yechida ravina dloi mishkach pnimi. Amrav Yehuda Amrav kitzoyna. If you go ahead, they made a communal erev, and they put it in the outer chutzner. They put it in the outer chutzner. That was the din, regardless of who forgot, whether it was the inner guys who forgot or the outer guys who forgot. They're going to be asa. Doesn't make a difference. In other words, so they put it in the outer chutzner, they put it in one echad, it says shakach echad, it doesn't make a difference who forgot, they're both going to be usher, and the Gemara is going to explain this case. Amrav Yudah Amrav Chitzayna Umay Karei Makam Echad, Makam Miyuchad Shteim, it's the place that's Miyuchad Wat for both. Let's see the Rashi on the bottom, 3 lines from the bottom. Amrav Yudah Amrav Chitzayna. You put the communal Erev, again, they're making an Erev together, not separate. They made a separate Erev, and now they're putting it together. Now, the Hasam Pnimius Asura, the inner one's Asa, Misham Shikha the Chitzayna, because of the Shikha of the outer one. The Lekalamay Mitistalik Mina of Tishamis, you can't say, leave me alone, I'll close the door and I'll be Mishamis. The lesser Leiruv Gaba. The Erev's in the outer one. So if one of the outer guys forgets, the inner guy can't say, so what do you want from me? And bottom line is, the Erev's in the outside. So obviously, if the Erev's in the outside, it's one big chutzner, and I'm out there. So they can't be mutter. The shikha, right? And the chitzaynia will be forget because of shikha, the panemius, mishum regel asura. And if the inner one forgot, it's going to ask because of him walking out. That's it. In other words, so therefore, if you put it in the outside, if the inner outside guy forgot, the Erev guy is asa, even though they didn't forget, because the Erev's outside. And if it was a inner guy that forgot, then the outer guys are asa because the guy can walk out. So therefore, if the case is, if you went ahead, you made a communal Erev, you put it in the outside, whether the guy who forgot inside and the guy who forgot outside, they're both asa. If the guy from inside forgot, then he has the rights to go out. And that's going to asa. If a guy from the outside, if the inner did forget, but the outside did forget, the inner is still going to be asa because the Erev is not by him. However, let's say you put the Erev on the inside, the Then if the inner one forgot, the outside's asa mishum trisas asura, because the inner one forgot. Aval panimius loy mitzvah mishum shicha the chitzayna the after dasha mishtah. Pirish. If you put the erev in the inside and the outside guy forgot, the inner guy has everything working for him. A, the erev is by him. B, no one forgot. So therefore, close the door and I'm good. If the inner guy forgot, he has rights to go out. That's going to mess up the outside guy. But as long as the erev has two milas, one, the inner, the pneumius is inside, and B, you can go ahead and close your door, because you can say, listen, you forgot, I didn't forget, I'm good. Then you'll be mutter. So therefore, when the Mishnah says the case they're both usher, it must be speaking when the erev's outside. Because when the erev's outside, even if the inner guys didn't forget, they got a problem because the erev's outside. Okay, that's the hezbollah of the Gemara. I'm Rabbi Damarav. Kitzoyna makam echad means kitzoyna. Umay karile makam echad. Why do they call it one spot? It's makam miyuchel shteim. It's the spot where they both can go, because the inner guys can go to the outer guys. The outer guys, there's no reason for them to go to the inner guys. I'm in base. Tanya nami hachi. We have a brisa that says it openly that makam echad refers to the outer. Nasnei ruvim bechitzayna. If they put the erev in the outer one, the shakach echad. Now, they're both asa. Again, to reiterate what they're both asa. The inner one is asa. Why? The inner one is asa because the air is not by him. The outer one is asa because if the inner guy forgot, because he can walk out. However, if they put the air in the inside, the shachach echem in apnimius, and one of the inside forgets, then they're both going to be asa. Why? Because he has drisas on the outside. However, if the erev is on the inside and the outside guy forgot, that's the case with the inner one will be mutter and the outer will be asa. That's Rabbi Kiva's shita, that since the inner one is mutter, he still can asa on the outer one. However, so since the outer one forgot and the inner one and the erev is on the outside. One second, let me go over this again. Let's start from the top again. Eruvin bechitzayna, if the erev is on the outside, v'shakach echad, and one of them forgot, bein min achitzayna ubein min apnimius, whether it was the outside guy who forgot or the inside guy forgot, v'lei eruv, and they didn't make an erev, shtei masurais. However, nasn eruvin b'pnimius, if the erev is now on the inside, v'shakach echad min apnimius, v'lei eruv, shtei masurais. Min achitzayna, however, if you put the erev on the inside and an outside guy forgot, Iruv, then shteim asurais. Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi holds the following. He says that since the erev is on the inside, the outside guy forgot, they'd all be asa. In this case, the inner one would be mutter. Now the Gemara fears like Amalei Rabbi Rav Chanel Abaya. Maishnol Rabbanan the Omar Pnimi Muteres. If the erev is on the inside and an outside guy forgot, what's the reason we say the Pnimi is mutter? Mishum da achta dasha mishtamish. Close the door and mishtamish. What happened? We made it a communal erev. The erev is here on the inside. One of the outside guys forgot. It's not my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. Close the door. Rabbi Kiva nami tiyache dasha v'tishtamis. Why does Rabbi Kiva hold shtei masuros? Rabbi Kiva says even if the outside guy forgot, even if the erev is on the inside where it's insulated, and it's far to say to isolate the inner chatzah from the outer chatzah, Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion they're both usher. Why? Amalei. So said Abaya, erev margila, meaning where the erev is, it causes regilas. So since the erev is on the inside, it causes the outside guys to be able to come there. And one of the outside guys forgot. Therefore, despite the fact it's isolated on the inside, and despite the fact that the outside guys can get to the Rishus HaRabim without going to the inside, since the erev is on the inside, it creates a relationship of regilas that the outside guys can come in. And since one of the outside guys forgot, it's like there's one erev that doesn't exist, and therefore the inside guys can't carry as well. Fred the Gemara Labana Nami erev Magila, right? The Rabbanan also, why don't we say that Svara? Why do the Chacham hold that the inside guys can close the door and say Tzeischem l'Shalom? Why don't we say that since the erev is by the inside guys and the outside guy forgot, and since erev Magila that the outside guys can go inside, it should also be able to go ahead right and aser. The Amra, because the inside guys can say to the outside guys, listen, we made an Erev together, Shituf together for our benefit, not for Achasarim. And now you forgot, you're forgetting, you outside guy forgetting is going to mess me up. I'm not going to let that happen. Close the door, I'm good. That's the Chachamim. So we're Rabbi Kiva also. Good, you have a svara that the Erev is Magila, that the outside guys can go to the inside. Bottom line is, listen, we came together with you for our good, not for our bad. Let us close the door and isolate ourselves from good. So Adam Malay, so in a second you have an Eitzah. The outer guys, the guy who forgot, can be Mevatlus Rishus. So I didn't mess you up. There's still an Eitzah for you to carry. Since there's still an Eitzah, and you can't say I messed you up, Memela, you're Asa. One second. You can't be Mevatel one Rishus to another. One Chatz l'Chatz. We had a machlekes earlier between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan, which we're going to revisit in a second, whether you can be Mevatel Chatz l'Chatz. So what's your taina? Your taina is the inner guys are cool. They have the Erev by them. They both didn't forget. Outside guys, one guy forgot. Let the outside guy go ahead and be Mevatel. 1 second. You can't be Mevatel. That's according to the Chachamim. So Lema, now obviously Rabbi Kiva held it could be Mevatel because that was his taina. Why the Rasa? You're not messing me up. What's the taina? You didn't mess me up, but you're going to be Mevatel. So Lema, let us say Shmuel, Rabbi Yochanan replied to the Rabban and Rabbi Kiva. Let's say Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan are arguing in the machlokes between Rabban and Rabbi Kiva. The Amoraim Shmuel who said Ein Mevatel Mechas l'Chatzer, and Rabbi Yochanan said Amor Rabbi Yochanan said you could be Mevatel. Let's say it's Tadia machlokes Tanoim, right? The Shmuel on the Rabbanan. Shmuel says Ein Mevatel Meshus l'Shus. We hold like the Rabbanan who say Ein Mevatel Meshus l'Shus. In the Mela, we got together that you should mess me up, and therefore, good, you forgot, you can't do bittul, and therefore you messed me up. Rabbi Yochanan the Amak Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva says you could be Mevatel, and if I didn't mess you up, so let us say machlokes Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan is machlokes Tanoim, a previous generation. Shmuel holding like the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yochanan holding Rabbi Kiva. Amalach Shmuel says Ein Mevatlin. Another Amefilu Rabbi Kiva who says Yesh Mevatlin. I'd kind of like Rabbi Kiva Hacha that Yesh Mevatlin Ela B'Shtei Chatzei Zulus Nemizu. The Asr Adadi. Over here, since they ask from each other because of the Drisas Regel of the inner one to the outer one, then we have the eights of Mevatlin. I'd be Moed, says Shmuel, there you can be Mevatel. Avul Hassam, where they're adjacent, side by side, not one in back of the other one. When they both had access to Rishus Harabim, Yikra Asri Adadi, they didn't ask from each other. So I hold Ein Mevalim Rishus Mechas L'Chatzer when it goes from one to the other, where you can't get out, right? Then you could be Mevatel. When do I hold Ein Mevatlin? That's where you both can get out. Side by side, both have access to Rishus Harabim. However, Amoida says Shmuel, who Rabbi Akiva, that when one is inside the other and the inside one can't get out unless he goes through the outer one, there in that case, what? You would be Mevatel Chatzer L'Chatzer. Rabbi Yochanan says you could be Mevatel Chatzer L'Chatzer. You said obviously you must hold like what? Like Rabbi Akiva. I'm not the Amir Filik Rabbanan. I can even like Rabbanan. I can like Rabbanan Chacha El the Amilei Ad Mevatlisli Ka'asta Aloi until you do the act of bittul. So good, you could be Mevatel, right? What's the halacha? You went ahead. We're speaking where the Arabs in the inner chutzner, the two guys in inner chutzner, the four guys in the inner chutzner, they all made an Arab and they didn't forget. One of the four guys in the outer chutzner forgot. So what did the Chachamim Taina? Close the door. We got together. You shouldn't mess me up. So what did Rabbi Kiva Taina? Let the one guy on the outside who forgot be Mevatel. Until you're Mevatel, you messed me up. So you didn't do bittul. That's what he means. It's mutter. Until you do bittul, it's mutter. Avol Hassam Ika Asr Allah. Mashain came over there like Rabbi Yochanan. There's no one's asking over there. So Rabbi Yochanan says over there I can hold Mevatel Chas L'Chatza. Mashain can over here. I'll say Ein Mevatel Chas L'Chatza because until you do the bittul, you're messing me up. Let's see Rashi in this last point. Al Mevatlisli Ba'od Shlei Betalta until you Mevatel at Yisra Salah. You're going to be asking on me. Dal Ana, Vidal Butula, get out of here, Levinule, I don't need you. In other words, it's not like you have a chance to Mevatel. Since you weren't Mevatel, I don't need you. Get out of here. Close the door. So therefore, over here, the Chacham say, Ein Mevatel Mechatz L'Chatza. Mashenkin over there, where it's not acid, there's no, his forgetfulness is not causing an isser where there's no isser, einachinami, you'll be mevatel mechatz l'chatz. The last thing the Mishnah was if they were yichidim, then they don't have to make an erev. So there's one Jew living in the inner chutzner, one Jew living in the outer chutzner, then they don't have to mevatel. What happened if there's two Jews in the inner chutzner? Two Jews. Then they'd have to make an erev, right? They'd have to make an erev. So says the Gemara. Tani Rebbe learned. Again, the names count over here. Rabbi Yosef says in the name of Rebbe. He says in the name of Rebbe, the Tana Rebbe, he says, Haya Gimel Asurim. If they be Gimel, that in fact would also. Says Rashi, Im Haya Gimel, Bein Beis HaChatzeros, between the two Chatzeros, there were a total of 3 people, then Oisrin. Then it would Asa, V'loimi Boy Shnayim B'Pnimi, not only 2 on the inside, the Havi Regal Asura, and 1 on the inside, Asur, actually Arvu. I there's one on the inside, so Lechora, there's no one to Asur, it's Regal Muteres. On that we say, we're Goizer, Mishum Rabim Pnimius. In other words, if we allow 2 on the outside, 1 on the inside, we may come without an Erev. We may come to allow 2 on the inside and 1 on the outside without an Erev. Now, 2 on the inside and 1 on the outside would not be good because 2 on the inside is Regal Hoi Seres. So therefore, says Rabbi Yosef in the name of Rabbi, when do we say you don't have to make an Erev 1-on-1? But if there's 2, whether on the inside and it's regular Seres, or 2 on the outside and it's regular Muteres, nonetheless, it will be Asa, because we're going to these 2 at these 2. I hope that made any sense. Okay, says the Rabbi. So, Amalu Rabbi, Loi Tatzisulei, do not listen to Rabbi Yosef who's saying this din in the name of Rabbi. In other words, the din is correct. However, this din was never stated in the name of the Tana Rebbe. He's misquoting, as we'll see why in a second. Ano Amisan Nehalei, I said it to him, that Amoyer Rabbi said, I told Rabbi Yosef this din, that as long as there's 3 people, you have to make an Erev. Umishmeidu Rav Adabar Ava Amisan Nehalei. And I told it in the name of Rav Ada Bar Ava, not the Tana Rebbe, but the Amoyer Rav Ada. Since I call Rabim B'chitzayna, since 2 in the Chitzayna, right? I call 2 in the Chitzayna, meaning 2 in the Chitzayna with Geizurata, 2 on the inner. That's what it means. Matam, Rashi says, Matam Hazem Mati Loi Choyel Vanikar Rabim B'chitzayna, Gazvini Mishum Rabim Pnimius. Since I call Rabim there, I'll be Geizer on the Pnimius, where it will be Regel Ha Iseres. Okay, that's the din, the same thing. And all we just focusing on now, it was Rabbi Bibi saying, I told it over Shem Rabbi Barava, not in the name of Rebbe. And that's what I told Rabbi Yosef. Now remember, Rabbi Yosef got sick. Throughout this Masechta in particular, we have a buyer reminding him, at Amr you told it to us and you said it on this. Constantly throughout the Masechta. So Amr Rabbi Yosef, Lashon Shvua, Morad Avraham, makes a Shvua, in the name of Avraham. Rabin berebi ichlafli. I heard the word Rabin, and I made a mistake. The word Rabin, you see the first 3 letters, is Rebbe. Says Rashi, Rabin berebi ichlafli, hakam shamali Rabin b'chitzayna. When he's Tam, he said, because there's 2 in the chitzayna, when you guys are at the 2 in the pinimius, nischalafli berebi. I mixed it up with the word berebi, kishachachti adava. When I forgot it, the choli and my sickness, the Chazat Gersasi, and I remembered my what? My learning of Rishayna, Niskati Shahuskali Rabin Bedavar, the Sava Yisi, Shenemala B'Shem Rebbe, and I thought it was B'Shem Rebbe. So Nischalafli Rebbe Rebbe. But in Nachanemi, that's their Shita. If you have 2 on the inside, certainly with need of an Erev, even 2 on the outside, you need of an Erev, because we're going to this or to this. Now we're going to have a conflicting opinion. Ushmul Amar Lo'olam Muteres, meaning if you have 2 in the outer and 1 in the inner, since 1 in the inner there's no one to aser, it will be mutter. Until you have 2 in the inner and 1 in the outer. So we're not guys are 2 out or the 2 in. You need mamish 2 in. Amar Balaza says Rabbi Laza, the Nachri, 1 guy in the pinimi, harihu kirabim and with aser, without Skiris, 1 Maishna Yisrael. What's the reason Yisrael 1 Deloyasar? The man the Yada, one who knows there's 1 person there, there's no Erev knows. Uman Deloyada, Savar Eruv Yarev. So in other words, you don't know what goes on in the Panimi. There can be 1 person, 2 people. If there's 1 person, You don't need it. And if you don't know it, you'll say they make an Erev. Nachri Nami, one guy also, I mean, on the Yada, the one who knows there's only one will know there's one. And Lo Yada Savar Iguri Agar. And the one who says there's maybe more than one would assume that the guy went ahead and rented it to him. So we know a guy could rent. So L'chaira, what are you worried about? Why would you say that one Nachri will be considered like two? L'chaira, they would know. And for the Gemara, Stam Nachri, he is Stagur, if he would go ahead and rent, Mifa Poye, there would be a Poye is lashon a pool, like the cow makes a noise above a camel. There would be a poil. There would be a poil to that he did it. So look at Rashi, 3 lines down where it gets semi-wide. Mifa Poye, Kola Islay, when he does the rental, Bahani Loy Igor, and this one, right? Umandla Yoda Shu Darsham Yichidi Savar, dangerous is a regular seres. And the one, obviously this guy didn't rent, and the one who doesn't know that he lives there alone would say that there's no problem with Yusuf Zaregal. And therefore, he'd come to mistakenly think that with 2 people it would be mutta, because he thinks there's 2 people there. So therefore, to avoid this, we go ahead and say it's asa. Inami, another reason, Erev shel pnimi v'chitzayin moel b'makam nachri b'lo yistiris. They'll say, oh, there's a guy living there, and guess what? You see that you can carry. It must be that this whole day of carrying is only what when there's a guy in one chutzah, when there's a guy in 2 chutzahim, especially one within the other, you don't have to go ahead and rent, which is not true. So to avoid that, we say the nachri is like a rabbin, and therefore we'll avoid everything. I wish you all a good Shabbos, and see you Bez Hashem tomorrow night, 8:30. Have a great Shabbos.